When one of the most famous actors in the world walked through the door of a small diner on a cold Tuesday morning in Los Angeles, nobody recognized him. And that was the problem. He wasn't dressed like a movie star. He wasn't surrounded by cameras or bodyguards or people carrying his bags. He had on a worn gray jacket, old boots, and a thick beard that hadn't seen a razor in weeks. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been awake too long and just needed somewhere warm to sit down and eat something simple. He just wanted eggs and coffee. But before he could even find a seat, the manager walked up, looked him over from head to toe, and told him to leave. Right in front of 7 empty booths. The man didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't pull out his phone. And he just said, "Okay," and walked back outside into the cold and sat down on a brick wall like it was the most normal thing in the world. But here is where the story stops being about a man being turned away from a door. Because sitting inside that diner was a young waitress named Marlena. And Marlena was carrying something that nobody in that building knew about. A secret so heavy it had been keeping her up every night for months, doing math at her kitchen table that never once came out right. And the man sitting on that brick wall outside? He heard everything. What happened next? What he did? What he left behind? And why an entire diner full of people went completely and totally silent is one of the most quietly powerful things you will ever hear. Stay with me for the whole video. Because the moment that note gets read out loud, everything changes. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a movie Tuesday. Not a red carpet Tuesday. Not the kind of Tuesday where photographers wait outside restaurants with long lenses and security guards talk into earpieces. Just a cold, gray, ordinary Tuesday in February 2022. In the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles, where the sidewalks smelled like rain and motor oil, and the morning light was the pale color of old dishwater. A man walked up to the front door of a small diner called the Blue Sparrow. He was not easy to recognize. Not that morning. He wasn't wearing anything that cost more than $30. He had on a wrinkled gray jacket with a small tear near the left pocket. Dark jeans with a busted knee. A black beanie pulled low over his ears, almost to his eyebrows. His boots were scuffed at the toes, the kind of scuffed that comes from real use, not fashion. His beard was thick and dark and had not seen a razor in weeks. His eyes, when you could see them under the hat, were the eyes of a man who had not slept. Not just last night, but for a long time. The kind of tired that lives deeper than the body. He stood outside the door for a moment. He read the menu taped in the window. Eggs, toast, coffee, pancakes, simple things, good things. He was quiet. He was completely alone. Then he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The Blue Sparrow Diner had sat on Effie Street since 1987. It had red vinyl booths cracked at the corners and a long counter with chrome spinning stools. It smelled like coffee and bacon grease and maple syrup, a smell so warm it hit you before you were fully through the door. On weekday mornings, it filled up with construction workers in dusty boots, nurses finishing long night shifts, and old men who spread their newspapers across the whole table like they owned the place. It was not a trendy spot. Nobody came here to be seen. $1.50 got you a refill, and the cook knew your name. The man in the gray jacket walked in and stopped near the host stand. He looked around once, not nervous, just calm. He put his hands in his jacket pockets. A manager came forward. His name was Darnell Webb. He was 34 years old. He had been managing the Blue Sparrow for 3 years. He was not a mean man, not a cruel one, but he was a careful man. He had seen trouble walk through that door before. People who never ordered, who made customers uncomfortable, who left without paying. He had rules. Though he followed them because he believed following rules was what kept things from falling apart. Darnell looked the man over, head to toe. It took less than 5 seconds. He saw the torn jeans, the scuffed boots, the heavy beard, the beanie pulled down low. He made his decision the way careful men do, quickly, quietly, and with complete confidence that he was right. "Sir," Darnell said, crossing his arms across his chest, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man blinked slowly. "Sorry? We're at full capacity right now. I can't seat you." The man in the gray jacket looked past Darnell into the dining room. There were at least 7 empty booths. Red vinyl. Quiet. Waiting. Anyone in that diner could see them. The man could see them. Darnell could see them. Everyone knew. "I just want something to eat," the man said. And he said it, the way people say things when they are used to being patient, in situations that don't deserve their patience. Darnell didn't move, didn't blink. "I understand that, but I can't seat you right now." The man stood there one more second. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't reach for his phone. He simply looked at Darnell with dark, steady eyes. The eyes of someone who has been through enough in his life that a moment like this, as small and sharp as it was, did not surprise him. "Okay," the man said. He turned around. He pushed the door open. He walked back outside into the cold, gray morning. And that was when the silence, the real silence, the one that would eventually reach every corner of that diner and stop every single person inside it cold, began. Before we go back to that door, you need to know about Marina Ortiz. She was 29 years old. She had been a waitress at the Blue Sparrow for 4 years, long enough that the red vinyl booths felt more familiar than her own couch. She wore her black hair pulled back in a tight ponytail every shift, and she kept a purple pen behind her right ear, a habit from her first week on the job that she had never broken. She almost never used the pen. She had trained herself to remember every order by heart. Table 3 wanted no butter. Table 6 liked their coffee with exactly 2 sugars. She knew all of it, all the time, without writing a single word down. The customers loved her for it. It made them feel seen. What nobody in that diner knew was what Marlena was carrying when she walked through the door each morning. Her daughter's name was Sofia Reyes Ortiz. She was 7 years old. She had big, dark eyes that took up too much of her small face in the best possible way, and a laugh that came out high and bright, like someone shaking a jar of bells. She loved dinosaurs. She loved grape juice. She loved a stuffed elephant she had named Peanut since the age of 2, back when Peanut was bigger than she was. She slept with Peanut every night, tucked under her left arm, without exception. In October 2021, Sofia was diagnosed with a rare kidney condition. The doctors at Children's Hospital Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard explained it carefully. They used calm voices and clear words. They said the treatment worked. They said the outlook was good. What they also said, in those same calm, clear voices, was that the treatment was expensive. Very expensive. And the kind of expensive that turns a person's kitchen table into a battlefield at midnight, covered in bills and calculators and the quiet wreckage of a budget that simply does not stretch far enough, no matter how many ways you try to fold it. Marlena worked double shifts. She picked up extra weekends. She applied for every assistance program the hospital's social worker gave her a pamphlet about. She kept a glass jar on her kitchen counter, where she dropped every tip over $5. The jar was filling, but not fast enough. It was never fast enough. Every morning she drove Sofia to Micheltorena Elementary School in her 2009 Honda Civic that made a sound like a sick cat when she turned the ignition. Every evening she helped with homework, read 3 pages from a chapter book. He sat at Sophia's bedside until the small breathing slowed and the dark eyes finally closed. Then Marlena walked to the kitchen, sat down at the table, opened her phone's bill pay app, and did math that never came out right. She had told no one at work. Not Priya. Not Darnell. Not even Jimmy Kowalski, the regular who had once slipped her $100 bill on Christmas Eve just because he noticed she looked tired. She had smiled at Jimmy and said, "Thank you," and cried alone in her car afterward for 6 full minutes before driving home. She kept her pain quiet. She was very good at that. On the morning of that cold Tuesday in February 2022, Marlena was standing behind the counter filling coffee cups when she heard the front door open. She heard Darnell's voice get low and firm the way it did when he was managing something. She didn't look up right away. She was thinking about a phone call she had received the night before from the hospital billing office. The woman on the phone had said a number. The number had sat in Marlena's chest all night, like a stone at the bottom of still water. Heavy and impossible to move. She poured the coffee. She poured it until it ran over the rim of the cup, down the side, and pooled warm and dark across the counter. She still didn't look up. Not until she heard Priya's voice say, quietly, from somewhere near the window, "Darnell." By then, it was already over. Marlena grabbed a dish towel and wiped the spilled coffee without thinking. She looked toward the front of the diner just in time to see the door swing shut. Through the glass, she caught the back of a gray jacket moving away. A beanie. Scuffed boots on wet pavement. Then nothing. Just the door, settling back into its frame like nothing had happened at all. She looked at Darnell. He was already straightening the menus on the host stand, tucking them into their little wooden slot. Neat and clean. The way you tidy something up after it's done. Marlena opened her mouth, then she closed it. She had worked under Darnell for 3 years. She understood him. He was not a bad person. He paid his staff on time. He remembered birthdays. He had once driven Priya home at midnight when her car wouldn't start. But he also had a wall inside him. The kind that goes up fast, without warning, built from rules and worry and the fear of what happens when you let the wrong thing through the door. Marlena had seen that wall before. She just had never watched it fall on someone who didn't deserve it. She said nothing. She went back to the counter. But Priya had been watching the whole thing. Priya Nair was 26 years old. She had moved to Los Angeles from Houston 18 months earlier with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a very clear plan that had immediately fallen apart upon arrival. She had taken the waitressing job to pay rent while she figured out what came next. She was still figuring, but she was sharp, sharper than most people gave her credit for. And she noticed everything. She had been wiping down the window booth when the man walked in. She had watched Darnell's posture change. She had watched the man look at the empty booths. She had watched him say, "Okay," and leave without a fight. Now she stood at the window, looking out at the brick wall just to the left of the entrance. The man had sat down on it, and he had his elbows on his knees and his coffee cup, bought from the bodega 2 doors down, she realized, held in both hands. He was looking at the street. Not angry, not sulking, just present, the way a person is present when they have learned that some rooms will not open for them no matter how politely they knock. Priya leaned a little closer to the glass. Something was pulling at the back of her mind, something she couldn't catch yet, like a word on the very tip of your tongue that disappears the moment you reach for it. She studied his face through the window. The beard was heavy. The hat was pulled low. The clothes were all wrong. But the face, even under all of that, the face was familiar in a way that made her chest do something strange. She just couldn't place it. Not yet. She picked up her coffee pot. She walked to table 4, where Jimmy Kowalski was cutting into his usual scrambled eggs with the focused energy of a man who considered breakfast a serious event. "Jimmy," she said softly, tilting her head toward the window, "you see that man out there on the wall?" Jimmy looked up. He found his glasses on the table beside his orange juice and put them on. He studied the man outside for a long, careful moment. "I see him," Jimmy said. "Does he look familiar to you?" Jimmy squinted. He leaned forward slightly, the way old men do when they are giving something their full and genuine effort. Then he leaned back. "No," he said. He picked his fork back up. "Should he?" Priya pressed her lips together. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe." She walked back to the counter. She refilled 2 cups. She smiled at a woman near the back who asked for more syrup, but her eyes kept drifting to the window. And outside, on that cold brick wall, the man sat completely still, patient and quiet, and unknowingly holding a secret that would, before the morning was over, bring an entire diner to absolute silence. Here is what Darnell Webb did not know when he crossed his arms and pointed that man back toward the door. He did not know that the man had been awake for nearly 31 hours straight. He was in the middle of filming John Wick. Chapter 4. In Los Angeles, a production that had been grinding through the city since mid-2021, pushing its cast and crew through night shoots and punishing physical sequences that would have broken most people half his age. He had wrapped a night shoot near downtown Los Angeles at 5 in the morning. He had not gone home. He had just driven. The way he sometimes did when his mind was too loud for a pillow and too tired for anything useful. He had driven through the dark city with no real destination, past the lit windows of all-night laundromats and the closed gates of parking garages, until he ended up in Silver Lake, and hunger had pulled him toward a diner with a warm light in the window. He did not know that Darnell had seen his jacket and his boots and made a decision in 5 seconds that took no account of anything else. He did not know that Darnell could not have known. What Darnell could not have known was this. In 1999, this man had held his daughter. She was born on December 24th of that year. She was born still and silent, and he held her anyway, and he named her Ava, and he carried that weight into every single room he ever walked into after that day, including this one. In April 2001, he lost the woman he loved. Her name was Jennifer Syme. She died in a car accident on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles, a road less than 15 minutes from where he now sat, on this brick wall, drinking bodega coffee in the cold. He had already known, by then, what it meant to lose someone completely. He learned it again anyway. Some lessons do not get easier the second time. Darnell could not have known that this same man, after The Matrix became one of the biggest films in the world in 1999, had quietly given away a reported $75 million of his own earnings to the costume designers and the visual effects teams, the people who never stand at the front of the stage. He made no announcement. He called no press conference. He simply decided that the people who helped build something deserved to share in what it became. He could not have known about the photograph taken in December 2019 on a New York City subway car. The man was sitting in a regular seat, backpack on his lap. No entourage, no security. A woman standing nearby was carrying heavy bags. Without being asked, he moved his backpack and rested it on his own knees so she could set her bags on his lap and rest her arms. Someone took a photo. The whole world passed it around for a week because it was so simple and so rare. A person, just being decent, in a moment when no one important was watching. Darnell could not have known any of it. But here is the thing about not knowing. It does not change what you do. It does not reach back in time and uncross your arms or reopen the door. Not knowing is not an excuse, and it is not a crime. It is just the condition most of us are living in, most of the time, making fast decisions about slow, complicated people based on the thinnest slice of what we can see. The man on the brick wall understood this. That was perhaps the most remarkable thing about him. He was not sitting out there in anger. He was not composing a furious post in his head. He was just sitting, drinking his coffee, watching a small brown sparrow hop along the edge of the pavement and peck at something invisible between the cracks. His name was Keanu Reeves. He was 47 years old, and the sparrow hopped once more, then flew away. Inside the diner, Marlena Ortiz was moving the way she always moved during a busy morning, steady and automatic, like a river that has learned its own banks. She carried plates. She smiled. She refilled cups. She said, "Of course," and coming right up, "And you want hot sauce with that?" In the easy rhythm of someone who has done something so many times that her body does it while her mind is somewhere else entirely. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. It was on a number. A specific number. The number the hospital billing woman had said to her over the phone the previous night, in a calm and professional voice, as if she were reading the weather forecast and not dismantling the floor beneath a mother's feet. Marlena had written the number on the back of a receipt. She had folded the receipt in half. She had put it in the small front pocket of her apron, where she could feel it pressing against her hip every time she moved. A tiny, folded piece of paper that weighed more than anything she had ever carried. At 8:47 in the morning, her phone buzzed. She felt it through the apron fabric, against the same hip where the folded receipt lived. She knew the number before she looked. She had saved it in her phone under 3 letters. CHL, Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. She carried 2 plates of pancakes to table 4. She set them down. She smiled at the couple who had ordered them. She refilled their water from the small pitcher on the table. She said enjoy the way she always said it. Then she walked straight to Darnell. "I need 2 minutes," she said. He looked at her face. He nodded once. "Go." She went through the swinging door into the kitchen, past Bertrand at the grill, past the tall stack of clean white plates on the shelf, past the industrial sink where a college kid named Marcus was washing dishes with headphones in, completely unaware of anything that was not inside his own music. She pushed open the back door and stepped into the alley. It was not a kind place. It smelled like dumpsters and dish soap and wet cardboard. A rusted drainpipe ran down the back wall of the building. A pigeon was standing on the lid of the dumpster, looking at her with complete indifference. She pressed her back against the cold brick wall of the diner. She answered the phone. "Ms. Ortiz?" The voice was pleasant, professional, unhurried. "Yes," Marlena said. "I'm calling to go over the updated treatment plan for Sophia. The specialist has reviewed her file and is recommending an additional round of treatment beginning in March. But I wanted to discuss the costs before we proceed." Marlena closed her eyes. She pressed her free hand flat against the brick behind her, feeling the rough cold of it against her palm, grounding herself the way you grab something solid when you feel the ground tilting. The woman on the phone said the number. Marlena had been expecting a number. She had been bracing for a number. She had spent the whole night pressing herself against the idea of a number. But hearing it spoken out loud, in the cold air of that back alley, with the pigeon still watching and the drainpipe dripping and the sound of the grill hissing through the wall, Hearing it out loud was different from knowing it was coming. She breathed in through her nose. "Okay," she said. "We do have a payment plan option that—" "Okay," she said again, softer this time. So she thanked the woman. She ended the call. She stood completely still in the alley for 40 seconds, not moving anything except her chest, which was rising and falling in the slow and careful way of a person who is deciding not to fall apart. Then she fixed her face. That was the skill she was most proud of, and most exhausted by, the ability to fix her face, to press everything raw and frightened back behind her eyes and replace it with something smooth and ready. She straightened her apron. She tucked a loose strand of black hair behind her ear. She put the purple pen back in its place. She pushed the back door open. She walked past Marcus and his music, past the clean white plates, past Bertrand, few who glanced at her once and said nothing because Bertrand understood kitchens, and kitchens had taught him that some silences needed to be left alone. She pushed through the swinging door, back into the dining room with its warm coffee smell and its clinking plates and its ordinary Tuesday morning noise. What she did not know was that the back wall of that alley, the cold brick wall she had pressed her hand against while she listened to that number, was the same wall that ran along the outside of the diner. And on the other side of it, less than 4 feet away, Keanu Reeves was still sitting on the brick wall. And the walls of the Blue Sparrow were not thick. He had heard everything. He sat with it for a moment the way you sit with something that lands on you unexpectedly. Not moving, just letting it settle. Feeling the full weight of it before you decide what to do next. A mother, a daughter. A number said out loud in a cold alley, in a voice that was trying very hard not to break. He knew that voice, not Marlena's specifically, but that voice, the one that has been practiced in bathroom mirrors and parking lots and back alleys, the voice that has learned to say, okay, when it means something closer to, I don't know how I will survive this. He knew that voice the way you know the face of someone you have never met, but somehow recognize completely. He looked down at his coffee cup. It was nearly empty now. The morning had gotten a little colder. Inside the diner, Priya was still watching the window. She had never fully stopped, even while she worked, taking an order from the couple at table 2, dropping off a check at table 7, smiling at a woman who asked whether the pancakes were made from scratch. Some part of her attention had stayed anchored to that glass and the man on the other side of it. She was still trying to catch the thing in the back of her mind. It was closer now. She could feel it. She thought about the jawline, the way he held the cup in both hands, the particular kind of stillness he had, not the stillness of someone bored or waiting, but the stillness of someone who had made a private peace with difficult things. She had seen that specific stillness before. She was almost sure of it. And then, the way these things always happen, not gradually but all at once, like a key turning in a lock, she remembered. It was 2019. She had been sitting on her old couch in Houston with her roommate Denise, a bowl of popcorn between them, and watching John Wick. Chapter 3. Parabellum on a Friday night. There was a scene set in a stable. Keanu Reeves was surrounded by horses. One of them, a big dark one, pressed its nose gently against his face. And he had smiled. Not the smile of an actor hitting his mark. A real one. Small and unguarded, and gone almost before it arrived. And Priya had said to Denise, without quite planning to, "That man has been sad for a very long time." Denise had said, "It's just a movie, Priya." But Priya had not been talking about the movie. She set down the coffee pot. She walked to the window. She stood close to the glass. She looked at the man on the brick wall. Really looked, the way she had not allowed herself to fully do before, because looking too hard at something you are not sure about can feel embarrassing if you turn out to be wrong. She looked at the jaw, the eyes, the shape of the hands around the cup, the way he tilted his head very slightly to the left when he was watching something on the ground. The sparrow was back. It had landed near his feet again and was pecking at the same crack in the pavement. He was watching it with the kind of quiet attention most people only give to things they love. Oh, Priya thought. She turned around slowly. Marlena had just come back through the swinging kitchen door. She looked pale in the way that people look pale when they have worked very hard to look normal. Her apron was straight. Her pen was behind her ear. Her face was composed and professional and completely heartbreaking to anyone paying close enough attention. Priya waited until Marlena was behind the counter. Then she moved close enough that no one else would hear. "Marlena," she said. She kept her voice so low it was nearly just the shape of words. Marlena looked at her. "The man outside," Priya said carefully. "The one Darnell turned away." She paused. "I think it's Keanu Reeves." Marlena stared at her. A full 3 seconds passed. "Priya," she said slowly, "that man is dressed like he lives behind a gas station." "I know," Priya said, "but look at his face." Marlena looked toward the window. She looked at the man on the brick wall. She studied him the way a person studies something they are not sure they are allowed to believe, carefully, and with one foot already halfway back toward doubt. She looked at the jaw, the stillness, the two hands around the cup. She looked for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, and almost to herself, "Oh no." Priya looked at her. "You see it too." It wasn't a question. Marlena didn't answer right away. She was still looking at the man through the window. She was doing the thing people do when their brain is trying to catch up to something their eyes already know. Running back through everything, checking it, doubting it, checking it again. She thought about Speed. 1994. She had watched it on a small television in her mother's apartment in East Los Angeles when she was 9 years old. She remembered thinking that the man on the screen moved through danger the way water moves. Like nothing could fully stop him, only redirect him. She thought about The Matrix, which she had seen twice in 1 week when it came out, once with her cousin and once alone because she needed to understand what she had seen the first time. And she thought about John Wick, which she had watched on a laptop at the kitchen table on a night when Sophia was finally asleep, and Marlena needed something loud enough to drown out the sound of her own thoughts. She thought about something else, too. Something smaller and realer than any movie. She had read a story once, she couldn't remember where, maybe on her phone late at night, about this same man sitting on a bench in New York City. Just sitting, next to a homeless man. Not performing kindness, not taking a photo. Just sitting beside another person the way you sit beside someone when you want them to know they are not invisible. She looked at the man on the brick wall. She made a decision. She untied her apron. She folded it over the counter. She looked at Priya and said, "Cover my tables for 5 minutes." Priya nodded immediately. See, Marlena walked to the front door. She put her hand on the cold metal bar. She pushed it open and stepped outside. The air was sharp. The sky was the flat white of a day that hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. A delivery truck rumbled past on Effie Street. A dog barked somewhere down the block. She walked to the brick wall and stopped about 4 feet in front of the man. He looked up. His eyes were dark and calm. Up close, they were also tired in a way that no amount of sleep was going to fix. the kind of tired that comes from years, not nights. Up close, she was certain. Completely and without any remaining doubt, she was certain. But she did not say his name, because that was not why she had come outside. "Hi," she said. He looked at her for a moment. Something moved across his face. A small surprise, maybe, and the surprise of being approached with no agenda. "Hi," he said. She stood with her hands at her sides. The wind lifted a loose strand of her hair and she pushed it back. "I'm sorry," she said. "About what happened inside." He shook his head slightly. "You don't need to apologize. It wasn't you." "I know," she said. "But it happened in my place. I've worked there 4 years. It's my place, too." He looked at her steadily. Then he nodded. The nod of someone who understands exactly what she means. That we are each responsible for the rooms we belong to. He looked back at the street. "Can I bring you something?" Marlena said. "Coffee? Eggs? On the house?" "You really don't have to do that." "I want to," she said simply. He was quiet for a moment. The delivery truck had turned the corner. The street was still. And a pigeon landed on the far end of the brick wall and immediately thought better of it and left. "Eggs would be good," he said finally. "Scrambled. Black coffee." He paused. "Thank you." She nodded. She turned to go back inside. She had taken 2 steps when she stopped. She turned around slowly. "I don't want to overstep," she said. Her voice was careful now, measured. "The way you carry something fragile across a room, slowly, with both hands. But I was in the back alley just a few minutes ago, and sometimes those walls are very thin." The man went completely still, not tense, not defensive, just still, the way a person goes still when something true has found them in a place they thought was private. He looked at her. "How old is she?" he asked. Marlena's throat tightened. The question was so direct and so gentle at the same time that it took her a moment to find her voice. 7, she said. He looked down at the pavement. He was quiet for a long time. When he looked back up, something in his eyes had shifted. Opened, maybe. Like a door that had been closed for a very long time, moving just slightly on its hinges. "I had a daughter," he said. "I know what it is to love someone that much and not be able to protect them." He said nothing more. He didn't need to. Those words held everything. December 24th, 1999, a hospital room, a silence that never fully ended. Marlena stood on the sidewalk outside her diner. The cold morning air moved around her, and she felt something pass through her chest that was not pity and was not sorrow exactly, but was the rare and quietly devastating feeling of recognizing another person's deepest wound and knowing they can see yours too. "I'll get you those eggs," she said softly. She went back inside. The warmth of the diner wrapped around her immediately. The coffee smell, the grill noise, the low hum of morning conversation. She stood just inside the door for 1 second, letting it all settle back around her like a coat. Then she walked to the counter, picked up her apron, and tied it back on. Priya looked at her from across the room, a question on her face. Marlena shook her head once. Not now. She went to the kitchen. Herr Bertrand was working the grill, a big man with a shaved head and a small gold earring who had been cooking at the Blue Sparrow for 11 years, and had the kind of quiet authority that comes from being the best person in the room at the one thing the room needs most. He was flipping bacon with the focused economy of someone who never wastes a movement. "Can I take the pan for a minute?" Marlena said. Bertrand looked at her. He looked at the pan. He looked back at her. He stepped aside without a word. Marlena turned the heat to low. She cracked 2 eggs. She stirred them slowly. the way her mother had taught her. Patient and unhurried, moving the eggs in wide circles and letting them come together gradually rather than forcing them. A little salt. A small square of butter pressed into the center at the end, just before she took the pan off the heat. The butter melted into the eggs in slow golden ribbons. She slid them onto a plate. Plain white plate. She poured a black coffee, strong, into a plain white mug. She carried it all outside on a small tray. He was still on the wall. He looked at the plate when she set the tray down beside him on the brick. He looked at the eggs. Really looked at them, the way hungry people look at food when they have been too tired to admit how hungry they actually are. Then he looked up at her. "Thank you," he said. 2 words. But the way he said them, slowly, and from somewhere low and genuine, made them carry the weight of something much longer. "You're welcome," Marlena said. She went back inside. For the next 20 minutes, the blue Sparrow moved the way it always moved. Plates were carried. Orders were called. The coffee machine hissed and sighed. Darnell walked between the register and the tables with his clipboard, doing the small, precise work of keeping a place running. But Priya never fully stopped watching the window. She watched the man eat slowly, carefully, like someone who was grateful for something simple and knew it. He looked at his phone once, just once. He typed something brief. Then he put the phone away and finished his coffee with both hands around the mug, the way he had held the bodega cup earlier. Then he stood up. He picked up the empty plate and the empty mug from the brick wall. He carried them to the front door of the diner. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside just far enough to set the dishes gently on the host stand, not dropping them, not leaving them outside, but returning them the way you return something that was given to you with care. He straightened up. He looked across the length of the diner. His eyes found Marlena behind the counter. He nodded once. She nodded back. He walked out. Priya moved immediately to the window. She watched him walk south on Effie Street, his gray jacket growing smaller against the pale morning sky, until he reached the corner of Effie and Maltman Avenue and turned left and was gone. The whole thing, the nodding, the walking, the disappearing, had taken less than 40 seconds. "Was that?" Jimmy Kowalski started. His fork was suspended halfway between his plate and his mouth. "Yes," Priya said. "Was that actually?" "Yes, Jimmy." The table behind Jimmy had gone quiet. A nurse on her way home from a night shift at Cedars-Sinai, who had been eating toast and reading something on her phone, had looked up. Darnell had heard his name said from behind the register. He walked slowly toward the host stand. He looked at the empty dishes sitting on it. He looked out the window at the empty sidewalk. He looked down at the host stand more carefully. Under the white coffee mug, there was a folded piece of paper, small, torn from something, folded twice into a tight, neat square. Darnell looked at Marlena. Marlena walked over. She looked at the folded paper. She picked it up. Her hands were not entirely steady. She unfolded it once. She unfolded it again. She read what was written on it. She read it a second time, slower, as if the first time had been too fast to be real. Then her hand came up and covered her mouth. The end, every sound in the Blue Sparrow diner stopped. The fork that Jimmy Kowalski had been holding touched his plate with a small, quiet clink, and stayed there. Bertrand appeared in the kitchen doorway. Priya stood with both hands pressed against her collarbone. Darnell Webb stood very still with his arms at his sides. The coffee machine, which had been hissing steadily all morning, cycled off. The whole diner went silent, completely, totally, and without a single person planning it. Silent. Marlena stood at the host stand with the unfolded piece of paper in her hands and her palm pressed against her mouth. She was not crying. Not yet. She was in that place that comes just before tears, where your body has received something too large to process and is simply holding it, the way cupped hands hold water before it spills. Priya took one step toward her. "Marlena!" Marlena looked up. Her eyes were very bright. She lowered her hand from her mouth. She looked around the diner, at Priya, at Jimmy, at the nurse with her toast, at Bertrand in the kitchen doorway, at Darnell standing perfectly still with his clipboard hanging forgotten at his side. She looked back down at the paper. Then she read it out loud. Her voice was low and steady, the way voices are when a person is using every last piece of their strength to keep them that way. For Sophia. From someone who understands. K. That was the first part. The second part was not words. It was a phone number, written in plain, clear handwriting beneath the message. And below the number, one more line. Call this. Tell them Sophia's treatment is covered. All of it. Starting in March. But the silence in the diner did not break. It deepened. Jimmy Kowalski took his glasses off. He set them on the table beside his plate. He pressed 2 fingers against his mouth and looked out the window at the empty street. The nurse near the back, her name was Deborah Ailes. She had been working nights at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center on Beverly Boulevard for 14 years and had seen most things a person can see in a hospital. Set her phone face down on the table. She folded her hands. She looked at Marlena the way people look at something they want to remember correctly. Darnell Webb had not moved. He was looking at the host stand where the empty dishes sat. The plate. The mug. Returned carefully, with 2 hands, by a man he had pointed back toward the door because of a torn knee in his jeans and a beard that hadn't been shaved. So something was happening in Darnell's face. It was not comfortable to watch. It was the look of a person doing fast and painful arithmetic, adding up what he had assumed against what had actually been true, and arriving at a number that did not make him feel good about himself. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that the room wasn't already saying by being quiet. Marlena folded the paper back along its original creases. She folded it slowly, carefully, like it was something that could break. She put it in the front pocket of her apron, where the receipt with the hospital number had been sitting all morning. The 2 pieces of paper sat together in that pocket, one holding the weight of what she owed, and one holding the impossible answer to it. She called the number that afternoon, not during her shift, for she finished her shift the way she always finished it, steady, professional, every table cleared, every customer thanked. She said goodbye to Priya, who hugged her longer than usual and didn't explain why. She said goodbye to Bertrand, who nodded once from the kitchen with an expression that contained more feeling than most people express in full sentences. She said goodbye to Darnell, who looked at her when she said it, with eyes that were trying to communicate something he didn't yet have the words for. She got into her 2009 Honda Civic in the small parking lot behind the diner. She turned the key. The engine made its sick cat sound and caught. She sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. Then she took the folded paper out of her apron pocket and dialed the number. A woman answered on the second ring, and her voice was calm and warm and clearly accustomed to these calls. She confirmed her name. She confirmed the account. She confirmed that she had been expecting this call. She confirmed the amount, the exact amount, the number that had been said to Marlena in that back alley that morning while a pigeon watched from a dumpster lid. She confirmed that Sophia Reyes Ortiz's full treatment at Children's Hospital Los Angeles was paid. Beginning March 7th. All of it. Every round. Every appointment. Every bill that would have arrived in Marlena's mailbox and sat on her kitchen table in the pool of light from the overhead lamp. while she did math that never came out right. All of it. Gone. Marlena sat in her car in the parking lot behind the Blue Sparrow Diner on Effie Street in Silver Lake, and she let herself cry. Not the fixed face, managed. A back-alley kind. The real kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep inside a person that when it finally surfaces, there is no stopping it and no reason to try. She cried for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. She knew because she watched the clock on the dashboard without meaning to, the way you watch something when your mind needs an anchor. Then she wiped her face. She blew her nose with a napkin from the glove compartment. She looked at herself in the rearview mirror for a long moment. She thought about a man in a gray jacket, sitting on a brick wall outside a diner that had refused to let him in. She thought about how he had not gotten angry, had not made a scene, had not pulled out a phone and recorded it and let the world do his fighting for him. He had said okay and walked outside and sat down and watched a sparrow. She thought about how he had heard her voice through a thin wall, her real voice, the one she never used inside the diner, the one that only came out in alleys and parking lots and bathroom mirrors at midnight, and had done something so enormous and so quietly that no one would have known about it at all if a piece of paper hadn't been left under a coffee mug. She thought about what it means to be seen, not recognized, not famous person seen with cameras and crowds, but actually seen. Your real weight, your real worry, the thing you carry quietly and have gotten so good at hiding that sometimes you forget it's there yourself. She thought about a man who had lost a daughter, who knew what it was to love someone small and specific and irreplaceable and have the world be completely indifferent to that love. She thought about Sophia, and who was at school right now in a classroom at Michel Torena Elementary, probably drawing a dinosaur in the margins of her notebook, completely unaware that a stranger had sat on a cold brick wall on a Tuesday morning and decided, in silence and without any audience, to change everything. She started the car. She drove to school to pick up her daughter. Sophia came out through the front doors of Michel Torena Elementary at 2:47 in the afternoon, the way she always did. Backpack bouncing, ponytails sideways, one sock higher than the other. She was talking to a boy named Elliot before she even cleared the steps, gesturing with both hands about something urgent and important, the way 7-year-olds gesture when they have been saving a story all day and can no longer contain it. She saw Marlena at the gate, and her whole face changed. Not because anything was wrong, because her mother was there. That was enough. That had always been enough. She ran the last 20 feet. Marlena caught her. She held her daughter against her chest in the middle of the sidewalk outside Michel Torena Elementary School, with other parents moving around them and backpacks and lunch boxes and noise everywhere, and she pressed her face into Sophia's hair and breathed in. Sophia smelled like pencil shavings and grape juice and something faintly of the outdoors, the way children smell when they have been running around all day in the specific freedom that belongs only to them. "Mama," Sophia said, her voice muffled against Marlena's shoulder. "You're squishing me." "I know," Marlena said. She did not let go. "Mama." One more second. Sophia went still. She was 7, but she was also her mother's daughter, which meant she understood, without being told, without needing it explained, that some hugs are not just hugs. She put her small arms around Marlena's neck and held on. One more second. Sophia Reyes Ortiz began her treatment on March 7, 2022, at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, on Sunset Boulevard. She sat in the treatment chair with Peanut the stuffed elephant on her lap and asked the nurse whether dinosaurs could get the same kind of sick she had, and the nurse said she wasn't sure, but she would look into it, and Sophia said that was okay because she had decided dinosaurs were probably too tough for it anyway. She responded well to treatment. By June 2022, her doctors reported that her condition was improving steadily and consistently. By September, the improvement had held. And by the end of the year, the outlook her doctors used words like encouraging and positive, and once, in a hallway conversation that Marlena replayed in her memory for weeks afterward, remarkable. Marlena kept the folded piece of paper in the glass jar on her kitchen counter, the same jar where she used to keep tips over $5. It sat at the bottom of the jar, alone, because the jar no longer needed to be filled with anything else. She never posted about it. She never sold the story. She never contacted a newspaper or a television show or anyone who offered her money to tell it publicly. And several people did offer, once the story began to move through the city the way stories do. Quietly at first, then everywhere at once. The story leaked the way all true stories eventually leak, and through a person who told one person who told another. Through Priya, who posted 7 words on her personal Instagram account 3 weeks after that Tuesday morning, with no names and no details, just this. Today, I watched someone refused at a door give more than most people give in a lifetime. She got 43 likes. Then 400. Then the number climbed past anything her small personal account had ever seen and kept going. And the comments began asking questions she did not answer. And the internet, which is very good at finding things it has decided it wants to find, did the rest. The name that surfaced was never confirmed and never denied. Darnell Webb stayed at the Blue Sparrow for 6 more months after that Tuesday. He was not asked to leave. He was not punished or reported or publicly shamed. He left on his own, in August 2022, to enroll in a management training program he had been putting off for 2 years. Before he left, he did one thing he had never done in 3 years of managing that diner. He put a small handwritten sign on the inside of the front door, just above the handle, where a person pushing it open would see it clearly before they were fully inside. The sign said, "Everyone who walks through this door is welcome here." It was still there the last time anyone checked. Keanu Reeves finished filming John Wick. Chapter 4. In early 2022. The film was released on March 24, 2023. It opened to some of the strongest reviews of his career and became one of the highest-grossing films he had ever made. He attended the premiere in Los Angeles. He wore a black suit. He stood on the red carpet and smiled for photographs and answered questions about stunts and training and working with the director Chad Stahelski, who had been his stunt double on the original Matrix in 1999 and had become one of his closest collaborators and friends in the decades since. No reporter asked him about a Tuesday morning in Silver Lake. No reporter asked him about a small diner on Effie Street or a brick wall or a piece of folded paper left under a coffee mug. At one point during the evening, a reporter asked him a question that had nothing to do with the film. It was the kind of question that gets asked at premieres when a reporter has heard something but cannot confirm it. Vague and leading, circling around a story without landing on it. "There's been talk," the reporter said carefully. "See that you've been involved in some quiet acts of generosity recently. Anonymously. Is that something you make a conscious effort to do?" Keanu Reeves looked at the reporter for a moment. He smiled, small and real. The same smile Priya had seen him give a horse in a dark stable in 2019, and immediately understood to be the smile of a person who has been sad for a long time, and found, against considerable odds, small reasons not to stay that way. I think people are kinder than the headlines make them seem, he said. You just have to look for it in the quiet places. Then he moved on to the next question. There is a diner on Effie Street in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. It has red vinyl booths cracked at the corners and a long counter with chrome spinning stools and a coffee machine that hisses and sighs all morning like something alive. It smells like bacon and maple syrup and coffee dark enough to stand a spoon in. There is still a purple pen behind a waitress's ear. There is still a jar on the kitchen counter at home. Empty now, its job finished. There is still a small girl who sleeps every night with a stuffed elephant named Peanut tucked under her left arm, who is doing well, who drew a picture of a triceratops last week and left it on the kitchen table for her mother to find in the morning. There is still a folded piece of paper at the bottom of a glass jar. For Sophia. From someone who understands. K. And on some mornings. The cold gray ones. Done the ones that smell like rain and motor oil and don't promise much when you first step outside. A person comes through the front door of the Blue Sparrow diner looking worn and tired, and like the world has not been especially careful with them lately. On those mornings, Marlena Ortiz gets there first, before anyone else can move. Before any decision can be made about who looks like they belong and who looks like they don't. Before the 5-second calculation that costs nothing to make and everything to get wrong. She picks up a menu. She walks to the door. She looks at the person standing there. Really looks, the way she learned to look from a man on a brick wall who had nothing to prove and no audience to perform for and chose grace anyway. And she says the same thing every time. Welcome in. Oh, what can I get you? Before you go, drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you are watching this from right now. I read every single one. And honestly, seeing how far these stories travel never gets old. If this one moved you even a little, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, and it helps more people find this story. In a world that sometimes feels like it is moving too fast to be kind, maybe that matters. And if you want more stories like this one, real ones, about real people doing quietly extraordinary things when nobody is watching, subscribe to this channel. Every single video we make is built around one simple idea. That kindness does not always look like what you expect. Sometimes it looks like a man in a worn gray jacket sitting on a brick wall. But sometimes it looks like a waitress walking outside with a plate of eggs. Sometimes it looks like a folded piece of paper left under a coffee mug. It is out there. Every single day. You just have to know where to look. Now click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Because the next story is waiting for you, and I promise you, do not want to miss it.